So there were a few attempts to try to move some Palestinians out of Gaza, and of course, Israel has taken as many steps as it could throughout the war to move Palestinians around to basically minimize the casualties. But whenever I try to go to some of the international nations, let's say surrounding Arab nations or international organization, I keep seeing that the goal seems to be that they simply want Palestinians to suffer. And today we'll be talking about that. It's going to be sort of a different episode, sort of like a I don't know what to really call it, but sort of like prerequisite should be that I think number one, Palestinians, it's their fault for their own suffering. The fact is that they have decided to wage endless wars one after the other against the Israeli state, against the Israeli people, instead of trying to build something, instead of trying to make something out of their lives. And so anything that happened has been brought upon them, I think, by themselves. But there's always a question: what about the adults in the room? And the fact is, the international community has been sort of like egging on Palestinians to endlessly fight and never demanded anything different from them. So yeah, that's going to be something I want to go through today. Welcome to the reality show. Joining me today are Michael Kaufman and Anders Ingemarsson. Hey guys, it's nice to have you here. So let's go into the topic. So a report came out. Basically, it looks like 36,000 Palestinians have left since the war started. Now, when I saw the number in some regard, I was like, that's a pretty decent number, even if you go by sort of the Hamas number of 2 million Palestinians or around 2 million Palestinians, but they will bring it to several percentage points. But when you compare it to almost any other conflict, let's say just neighboring Syrian civil war, where millions have left, I think there is a question of why are Palestinians why are they staying? Let's say, I won't say forced to stay for now, but let's say why they seem to be staying. Now, these leavings have been mainly through Rafah crossing into Egypt, but some have even left through the Israeli border. And the main reason for leaving was basically they needed to get health care that couldn't be provided in Gaza. So, I'll go to you, Michael, for first. We'll later also talk about uh, basically sort of Israeli plans and what the world is saying to the plans. But 36,000, that's, better than nothing, but millions have left Syria. What is really happening? Why is nobody leaving Gaza?
Well, I don't know the numbers exactly about how many Muslims have entered into European countries over the last decade or 15 years, but I believe it runs in the millions, and you see that into the UK as well. And it is shocking that no Palestinians are really welcome into any other Arab state. They never have been. And it's all under this guise of forced relocation is against international law, and we can get into what even international law means. But it's all kind of spoon-fed from that. Clearly, Gaza is not somewhere where anybody wants to live. There's nothing much left there. And anything that is left is being bombed on a regular basis because, of course, the leadership of Gaza has decided that they're not going to surrender to Israel. And so they hold the hostages, and Israel has said, thankfully, Trump has backed them, that we're going to continue to bomb you and destroy things until you capitulate, your leaders capitulate. So I don't believe that any Gazans really want to stay there. I don't believe in any of this crap about this is our homeland. It doesn't seem to apply to any other Muslim in any other place practically, since millions have left various places, especially during wartime. And it's another excuse to allow terrorists to exist right next to Israel so that when the right time comes, we can have another Holocaust or another October 7th or whatever. That's what I make of it.
So we'll go into sort of the reasons for them staying. Now, I think we talked once about sort of do Palestinians want to leave? Depending on sort of the numbers or sort of the polls you look at, it seems to be at the low end, it's like 30%, and at the high end, it's like 50% of Palestinians simply do want to leave Gaza. And if you go to the educated people within the Palestinian population, it goes up to like 70 to 80%. So they really do seem that they want to leave. So, I mean, to go to you, Anders, somebody said in the chat, it's the large scale equivalent of tying yourself to a tree to prevent it getting cut down, which is, I think, an interesting comparison. But yeah, Anders, they want to leave, yet they are not. What's going on?
Well, I don't think even if I mean, they have nowhere to go. Nobody wants them, right? They're toxic as a group. I mean, there are individuals, of course, that as we know, there are Palestinians in the U.S. and in Europe, and many of them are productive citizens that are living their lives. But as a group, you don't know who you would get, right? So nobody wants them, and I think among these 36,000, they are either, as you said, they have a medical condition, or they have a foreign visa or passport. So that's how they could get out already. I don't know that any countries anywhere would grant them visas or passports right now. So I think they're just stuck, even if there are a lot of them that would like to leave if they could. Now, the other option there, of course, is to overthrow their own government, but we're apparently not there yet for some reason. They seem to have them in a pretty strong chokehold still. So yeah, so bottom line, they're not leaving because there is nowhere they are welcome.
Now, we'll talk a bit later about sort of what the world is doing about potentially leaving them. But let's first go to sort of Hamas sort of allowing people to go. It really reminds me, basically, Hamas commented on sort of all there is a plan for voluntary deportation by Israel. There was, of course, the Trump's plan to either temporarily move them somewhere, maybe to Sinai, to rebuild Gaza, and then sort of bring them back. Hamas has pretty much not only went against those, they are against any sort of people leaving Gaza. And the reasoning, of course, is they need their human shields. They need them to stay there to suffer. That is the goal. The goal is suffering. I mean, people might remember Sinwar when he was still alive. Luckily, he's not anymore. But while he was still alive, he said that basically these are necessary sacrifices. People need to die. This is for the cause. This is for the sort of greater purpose that, yes, civilians have to die. It doesn't matter if they are dying because Hamas is hiding behind them, because Hamas is using tunnels under hospitals, using tunnels under UNRWA headquarters, is embedded in the population, and therefore they die, or even killing their own people. I mean, Hamas doesn't allow any dissent. There have been happening few anti-Hamas protests in the last month, or maybe a bit longer or so, and they are killing all of them. They are not allowing anybody to survive. They are not allowing any dissent. So Hamas is strongly objecting to that, and there is one thing of they want the human shields, but there is also like that other thing. I remember a quote, and I found out that it's actually a quote for JFK. Not my favorite politician, but it's a pretty good quote. The quote is, "Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect. But we have never had to put up a wall to keep our people in to prevent them from leaving us." He was commenting, of course, on the basically the split in Germany, and when East Germany had to build a wall to basically not even allow people to actually see what the West can give them. To go to you, Michael, again, I mean, yeah, Hamas clearly has no interest in letting any Palestinians out, right? This is helping their cause. The more they suffer, the better. The more they suffer, the more propaganda they make, because then the world can come in, see how many Palestinians are dying. ignoring the fact that they are forcing them to stay in. They're forcing them to stay in these terrible conditions.
Yeah, I think it's worth maybe taking a minute to try to paint a picture of life under Hamas, and not just because they use you as a human shield, but Hamas doesn't produce anything useful. It doesn't produce anything that's necessary for sustaining life other than terror tunnels, which is really for Hamas. And if you're there, you are presumably have to find some kind of work, because you have to buy your food and you have to pay rent, or a mortgage or whatever, to the extent that any of that stuff exists. But of course, somebody owns the buildings, and somebody has to pay rent. So they need a bunch of subjects from whom that they can steal from, essentially, and extract and extort from. So this is not just about putting people up in front of human shields. As you said, Daniel, these people are evil. I mean, you disagree with them, you're dead. If you don't pay the ransom money, or whatever you want to call it, the extortion money or the rent, or give them up your food, especially if it came from the UN, all the AIDS groups, we know there's ample documentation that there's a ton of theft being done from where Hamas steals food given to Gazan civilians and so on. This is not just there for the people are not just kept in there. They're for human shields. They are kept in Gaza in order to provide the necessary things that Hamas needs to continue to live. So this is bad stuff. And anybody who supports Hamas even a little bit is not only stupid, but they are causing incredible amounts of harm and damage and suffering to people in Gaza. That's why the notion, when people yell free Palestine, the only people you need to free Palestine from is Hamas.
Yeah, and even sort of the goals of Hamas, right? As you said, there is nothing life-affirming about it. It's simply to destroy Israel. It's not to build up anything. It's not to, like, on the other side, you have Israelis that simply want to live, simply want to build and live and continue with their lives. Yet they have to dealing with Palestinian endless violence against them. While, I mean, again, what other group in history simply wanted to destroy? Like, it's not even like, even when you go to like the Nazis, at least they built some like big buildings. There was nothing life affirming about it. That it was a death culture in a very similar way. But when it comes to Palestinians, it's all about simply destroying Israel. And what then? Will then they finally build sort of some society that is worth sort of preserving, some society that is worth visiting, that is worth going to, that will bring anything to the world? I mean, to go to you, Anders, what really is the goal? Like, when we're talking about the goal of Hamas, there is really nothing positive about it. It is simply to destroy Israel. And the question is, and then what? And sort of that question, and then what, should be asked by the world, right? Anybody who supports Hamas, anybody who supports Palestinian cause, they should want to know what happens after they sort of achieve their goals.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a culture of death, right? It's nihilism with a thin varnish of, I guess, Islamism or something. I mean, that's the argument for pushing Israel into the sea and getting rid of it. And I don't know that they want to replace it with anything. I think they would be perfectly satisfied with having a wasteland that is nominally Muslim. That's so the fact that they don't seem to have a plan, and their supporters in the West are not asking for it, it's entirely consistent with the philosophy that they are subscribing to.
Yeah, and sort of moving on to sort of the way the world is commenting on it. We have the Turkish Prime Minister, although I'm not sure how, because technically it's no longer Turkey, right? It's Turkey. So how Turkish foreign minister has said on this about the plan of sort of deporting even voluntarily Palestinians. They said, we reject any plan that forces Palestinians to abandon their homeland. Two-state solution and lasting peace in the Middle East is sort of the goal. We support the reconstruction plan for Gaza that has been endorsed by the Arab League. We stand behind the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. We call on the international community to provide all support to achieve peace. I always laugh to see that sort of idea, we just want the pre-67 borders. It's like Palestinians are always like one generation behind, having like realistic demands. When there was the UN resolution for establishing both Israel and Palestine, they rejected and attacked Israel. After that, they were like, oh, okay, no. Actually, the UN resolution was pretty good, after we tried to wipe you out. Then they again lost the 67 war. And after that war, they were like, okay, actually, 67 borders were good. Okay, we tried to wipe you out, but actually, what we had before was working for us. It's never actually anything realistic, right? I mean, to go to you, Michael, like, what is the point of these demands when it's clearly not realistic? It's clearly not something anybody should sort of want. Like, you cannot lose several wars to wipe out the other side and then try to demand something for your own side.
Well, of course you can, because as long as you have, things are worth what people are willing to pay for them. So if you keep demanding and the West keeps capitulating and keeps setting up ceasefires imposed on Israel and keeps running around moronic, useless, broken kids running around thinking they're freedom fighters, and we all know that they're really a disaster, these kids, and frankly, they're gonna have a lot of life problems. But anyway. And you have a bunch of Democrats parading around talking about supporting the oppressed. You can keep doing it. You've got UNRWA still being funded by a number of countries. You've got all kinds of fake non-governmental organizations that are backed by crazy people who think that giving food to Hamas is somehow a good thing to do. And you can keep losing war after war after war, because you start off being the aggressor, you get the crap beat out of you, and then you play the victim card. And this whole victim card fits right into this oppressor versus oppressed crap that this new age of education is so fond of espousing, and that's how you sell it. That's what's so interesting about the philosophy behind all of this new age kind of stuff that's ripped into our education system. Is it started with critical race theory and oppressor versus oppressed, and it comes with DEI, which is just another diversity, equity, inclusion instead of meritocracy. And it's basically what it comes down to is merit no longer matters. Success is always due to the oppression of other people. It's amazing anyone thinks you can make progress by oppressing anyone, because it's impossible to discover new stuff and create new stuff by oppressing anyone, because you have to actually do something novel. But this crap has been fed to our students, and it largely exists on the left side of the political spectrum for decades now, and it's been growing and growing. And this is all a manifestation of that, what we're seeing with Hamas, that you can have a completely useless organization that has never contributed anything positive in the last 2 decades since it took over in Gaza. Nothing. The lives of these people are terrible. There are more of them, and they have just increased the suffering. They've lost every war they've fought. And yes, they've caused some dead Israelis. They're very proud of that. But you know what? Like Sinwar said, if we have 1,000 dead Palestinians and 1 dead Israeli, it's worth it. And the reason you can keep selling it is because the rest of the world, particularly the West, which funds a lot of this, is morally bankrupt. And they believe in this kind of bullshit altruism, pardon my language, instead of thinking about this rationally and understanding history, and that you cannot support this stuff. It's not how the West got to where it is, and it's not how progress is made, and it's not human flourishing. That's how you manage it.
Somebody in the chat is saying, I hope this title is satire, seriously. So the title is The Palestinian Suffering is the Goal. And the reason for that is because when we look at the actions by sort of the international community, I cannot come out with a different sort of perspective. I mean, they really do want Palestinians to live in delusion. Like this idea, like anybody who talks about sort of the Palestinian state with pre-67 borders, that's a delusion. I mean, that's a crazy thing. You are like, you know, these people always talk about the ethnic cleansing, but the people calling for pre-67 borders are calling for ethnic cleansing of 500,000 Jews from Judea and Samaria. That is simply what you are trying to do. It's just a different people you want to get rid of. That, like, that is unrealistic, and also that a kind of solution was on the table in the past, and Palestinians have rejected it. They always reject any sort of any plan that would actually have peace with Israelis, because they do want to keep fighting. And you know, it's sort of cyclical. They want to keep fighting, and the international community encourages them to keep fighting. They only reward them when they attack Israelis. I mean, after October 7, many states, many European states have started recognizing the Palestinian state that haven't previously. That is a reward for October 7. You are letting them know that this is a good thing to go. And on the opposite, there's never demands from the Palestinian side to make peace or to make reform or to do something about the radical parts of their sides. I mean, even when we go to the past, and I don't want to like talk about history too much, but the fact is that, you know, Israel didn't sort of occupy, and I'm using quotes, all of this area, right? Like after the independence war, Gaza and all of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, was not part of Israel. It was occupied by, well, technically it was annexed by Jordan. The West Bank was annexed by Jordan, but Gaza was occupied by the Egyptians. Did the international community sort of call for the Palestinian state? I mean, Palestinians wanted a state. They wanted to be independent. There were no full. They didn't have full rights in either in Gaza or the West Bank. They were living under military rule, and their sort of like political aspirations were suppressed, but they didn't. No international community called for anything. It's only when Israel had to defend itself again in the 67 war, had to take those areas and had to occupy them for some time. That's when people started for calling something different, not before. I mean, to go to you, Anders, now. Yeah, why is there like never any sort of demands from the Palestinian side?
Well, I think it goes back to the philosophy. They want war and conflict until they have driven Israel off its lands. And but to your previous comment, I mean, a two-state solution was never a viable solution, whether the Palestinians accepted it or not. If you look at a map of the West Bank today and at the different sectors, and you see that it is a cobweb of territorial areas. And as you said, there are some 500,000 Israelis living in the West Bank, and so they would basically be deported from there if there would be a two-state solution. And so, I mean, the only long-term solution here is that I've advocated for a long time is that Israel occupies both the West Bank and Gaza. I know they don't want to do that, but you know, there won't be peace until they rule it for the duration. It's a generational project, and you start out with you know, strict controls, of course, and then you implement gradually. You ease the restrictions, you implement property rights, and so on and so forth. And doing that, you know, you will see the Palestinians. They will start to eventually live a civilized life. I'm not saying that this will be easy, and I'm not saying that it will happen, but I think it's the only long-term solution, as little as the Israelis would like to take on that project or not.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to sort of the criticism of annexing all of the West Bank, or sort of Israel simply controlling it, it's the fact that the international community is simply not understanding the situation and simply wanting, again, sort of like wanting the Palestinian suffering to go on. If
Yeah,
Israel,
and you know,
yeah,
Israel, one of its problems is that it pays too much attention to the international community. You know, and I understand that there are dependencies, obviously, especially on the U.S. and our foreign policy in this area has obviously not helped. But at some point or another, or other, the Israelis have to say enough is enough and do what it takes.
yeah, I mean, we've always called for that. Basically, the number one reason why Israel is not able to actually do what is necessary is because, one, they pay too much attention to the international community, but also even internally, the Israelis pay too much attention to sort of what the world would think. But
Yeah, I
when,
mean, Israel in many ways, many respects, is its own worst enemy here because of a lack of ideological clarity and obviously because of the opposing factions within the country. I mean, in a way, Israel is a mini microcosmos of the world stage, you know, with all possible viewpoints and such. So it's not easy.
yeah, I mean, to go to the sort of basically a few months ago, there was a plan that would be there would be this sort of organization under the defense ministry of Israel that would facilitate the voluntary deportation of Palestinians who wish to leave. Again, if you check the polls, it looks like around 30 to 50% of Palestinians do really would prefer to leave. This is not something that will happen for the first time. That sort of a population would leave. Uh, but again, sort of when the media is the Western media is talking about this plan, they always put voluntary in quotes. But again, as far as I understand it, it would actually be voluntary. Um, uh, so far, nobody really wants to cooperate with that plan, and nobody sort of is opening up its borders or is sort of wanting for anything to happen. And to bring it back again to the Syrian refugee crisis, or basically when Syrians started to leave, the fact is that international community was fully supporting of basically trying to facilitate that. Turkey opened up its borders. It set up many camps and took. I think Turkey itself took like millions of Syrian refugees. Many European countries took refugees. But when it comes to Palestinians, there is this sort of like desire to basically keep them there. Make sure, yeah, they might be dying, they might be suffering, they might be in a terrible position, which again, just to make the most important point, Palestinians have brought this upon themselves. So the question is more for the sort of international community. Why do they want them to suffer? I mean, Michael, to go to you, this there is this Israeli plan for possible voluntary deportation. There was also a Trump's plan for allowing Palestinians to go out. So far, I mean, one thing where they could go is Sinai in Egypt. Egypt is saying that basically they do not want to cooperate in any way and allow any Palestinians to go in. Sort of the question is, what is the difference between Palestinians and Syrians? Like, why one group we want to facilitate one group's to get out, even permanently leave out? I mean, now there are talks about, since the old regime has fallen, that some Syrians could return. We also might be sending Mahmoud Khalil back to his homeland in a bit. But yeah, why? What is the difference? Why Syrians? We want them to leave. We don't want them to suffer. But Palestinians, no, no, no. You stay in Gaza.
Because it's anti-Semitism and it's anti-Israel. period. I mean, that's why I started this discussion earlier, and I mentioned, look at the millions of immigrants to Europe, and I don't know if it's tens of thousands to the US from various Muslim countries that have left under the guise of civil war or totalitarian repression from these countries that our college students largely seem to support these days. We've allowed millions in to other countries, but we haven't allowed any of them from this Palestinian area. And it's very simple. The world wants to keep Gaza active and the West Bank active because it sits on Israel's border, and it's a great way to continue to destroy Israel and force Israel to respond, and which will lead to so-called innocent lives lost. And then we can all scream about that. I mean, this is really simple stuff. And this notion that it's a lot more complicated than that is something that the experts and the pundits love to put out there, because God forbid you actually believe the simple explanation. And if you look at history, it's been going on for 2 decades. They want to keep this area. The other reason that UNRWA is so well funded is because they want to increase the population. The population of Gaza has exploded despite the so-called genocide. And they want to keep growing it. Not only will it cause problems because there's not a lot of space in Gaza, but it will increase the boiling point next to Israel. And this is really simple. The West Bank, no other country would tolerate this. I mean, Russia destroyed parts of Crimea and other places, and never mind eastern Ukraine, for doing very little, if anything at all, right? They just went in and took the areas. Israel would be absolutely consistent, and I'm not saying we should follow Putin, but we have a real problem here, and you see me here in Tel Aviv. We have a real problem in Israel. We have a tiny country, and we are surrounded by enemies. And frankly, one of the most active enemies that we're surrounded by now is Hamas and the equivalent Palestinian Authority and the other 20 terrorist factions in the West Bank. Frankly, there's almost as much activity going on in the West Bank right now as in Gaza. So this is really simple stuff. And we need to do something about it. The idea that we continue to spend the amount of GDP, our economy, on defense and put our young kids, I mean, we just had 2 soldiers die in the last couple of days. Still, these are young, good kids who've done well in school, who are off to good careers. They're not terrorists. They're here to defend the country. And they get into these terrorist zones, and it's a problem. But I don't think we have to look very far, Dana. I think that this is really very simple. The world does not want to reduce the pressure cooker of either Gaza or the West Bank for the simple reason that it can attack Israel. The world has been, especially Europe, has been very welcoming, at least their political leaders have, to bringing in millions of Muslim refugees, to the point where there are whole cities in Europe that are Muslim and Muslim controlled, including London, right? And it's just, if it defies logic, then go back to the logic. It doesn't defy logic. The logic is very simple.
Yeah, and talking about this plan, we of course have a commentary from Haaretz, where one columnist, Gur Megiddo, talked about specifically about the Trump's plan. If there were a true opposition in Israel, one with conscience, a worldview, and even some sort of a plan for the future, it would have raised a loud warning: don't drink Trump's potion. The idea of clearing an area of a specific ethnic group, even if it's bitter and ruthless enemy, is a concept that Jews, especially the sons of Holocaust survivors like Lapid and Gantz, must never support, no matter the circumstances. And again, that's sort of like a complete misunderstanding, not to mention that's what we did to Germans, Japanese, and Italians. They were driven, like Germans, Japanese, and Italians occupied parts of Europe, Asia, and sort of like around the areas of Mediterranean seas, and they were kicked out of there. They were removed from their place because they try to fight a war, try to fight like a world war, completely wipe out uh, parts of the world, parts of the population, and they pay the price for it. And this is exactly what should happen in Israel, in Gaza. I mean, what do you expect? Like, Palestinians have tried several wars and precursors to Palestinians when the Arab coalitions attacked Israel during its founding. They tried several times to wipe out Israel. At what point do you say that's enough? Like, you no longer get a chance to form a state. You no longer get a chance to sort of rule yourselves. There will be something different. There will be no. I mean, the idea of ethnic self-determination is completely turned on its head from the start. But it's yeah, there's just nothing. I mean, Anders, to go to you, why how could anybody expect to, like, imagine if somebody tried to kill you, and going from a nationhood to like a individual case is a pretty it's a bit harder, but sort of somebody tries to kill you, and then they like try to restore a relationship, or they try to demand something from you, or have try to demand any sort of compassion. I mean, what's going on?
I mean, it's the sacrificial nature of the underlying philosophy, and in Israel's case, it's. I mean, I agree with Michael that it's really quite simple, and this goes back to the anti-Semitism that has been there, and if it weren't for as bad as the U.S. foreign policy has been in the area, if it weren't for the U.S. Supporting Israel since its founding, I don't know that the country would still be there. But at some point or another, again, Israel is its own worst enemy, and until the country can get its act together and deal a decisive blow to these ideas of a two-state solution or any other kind of peace deal, and quite frankly, I am not sure what. I don't think Europe. They would scream and shout, obviously, but I don't think in practice they would do much. Now the U.S. is different. You never know from one day to another where our current president stands on the issue, but and how dependent Israel is on the U.S. But I mean, I don't see any other way out in the long term. Otherwise, it will just continue, and it'll calm down for a little while, and then we'll have another Hamas attack, and then we'll just keep repeating the same pattern over and over and over again. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I mean, when it comes to sort of what Israel has to worry, and I guess you could connect it to the Syrian civil war again. Assad was heavily sanctioned since the start of the war and since the continuation of the war. That is something that possibly, if Israel were to, let's say, fully occupy Gaza and the West Bank, and possibly even annex parts of it, or even honestly, like even annexing Area C might be pretty controversial. But if it was willing to stand behind it, could it withstand the sanction? Is a question that needs to be asked. But if your only two choices is to basically be an international pariah, but actually be a country, actually survive, actually be able to continue further, especially with as much as I dislike Trump in the White House, the fact is that I don't see him sort of abandoning Israel to the point of like putting sanctions on Israel, or sort of going together with Europeans to sort of try to stop Israeli sort of annexation of the West Bank. This is simply something I'm not seeing. So Israel has, I think, even when Trump took some missteps when it comes to his dealing with Israel, Israel is in a perfect opportunity. It can pretty much do whatever it wants in Gaza. It can really, and I don't even mean this by sort of like they can get away with things, because this is not about sort of getting away with things. This is about what the proper country should do. Like America or the allies bombing the hell out of Germans and Japanese is not getting away with it. That was what was necessary to actually finish the war. That was what was necessary to end the suffering of the people. It's not, yeah, it's not something that you simply can do if you want it. Like I mean, to go to you, Michael, Israel like has to do it. There is really no other choice. That
Yeah, look,
talking.
I think people like Marco Rubio and now Mike Huckabee are absolutely fine with Israel taking over the West Bank. I don't think it's even just Area C. I think they understand. I know they understand, those two guys for sure. Trump, as far as the U.S. is concerned and U.S.'s position on Israel, Trump also told Israel that they could bomb the heck out of Gaza, and Israel hasn't done it. I mean, let's be very clear that what's going on in Gaza is I don't know if it's a 50% level war or 70% level, but it ain't 100% at all. It's not like Trump gave them the green light and they went back in and decided to really win things. And there's a whole lot of internal Israeli politics and, of course, conspiracy theories and all kinds of theories about why Israel is not actually just bringing this thing to a conclusion, because there's a lot of terrorists left there, but their munitions and their weapons are so degraded. It really would be possible to finish this thing, at least mop it up. And the hostages would possibly be all killed. But the current war is not designed to release the hostages. So I don't understand why, and I have theories, but I don't need to go into them here. As far as the West Bank is concerned, there are major Israeli operations going on there every day, mostly at night, frankly, to neutralize terrorists coming out of the West Bank and so on and so forth. And there's nothing good that comes out of the West Bank either. Just like in Gaza, there's nothing positive that comes out there. A lot of those people used to work in Israel, because Israel had far better jobs available to these folks. And there's a ton of construction that has stopped here in Israel, including the place next to me, next to this high rise that you see me in here in Tel Aviv. We have construction going on. It stopped for a few months until they could hire foreign workers from other places, because the Arabs are all gone. And that's thanks to Hamas. And so this is really unclear to me why, but I don't believe for a second that Donald Trump and his group would have a problem. And frankly, you'll notice also that the foreign leaders who were so anti-Israel, you've heard Macron is toned down. And this is all because Trump and his team have made phone calls to tell them to shut the hell up and to stop treating Israel like it's some kind of pariah in the world. And to understand that if anybody did this to the U.S., forget about what Europe would do, because I agree with Anders. They would be upset about it. They would hold lots of committee meetings. They would look into it, and they would have investigations. And 6 months later, there might be a report. In the U.S., that's what we would have done under Biden, just like we did with the Houthis. We told them don't, and they did. And so we just let international shipping go away, and then said, well, it's not American shipping, which is a ridiculous statement. Anyway, I do believe that Israel could do a lot more. It's not moving very fast. There's a lot of reasons internally why that might be happening or not happening. But I think the West Bank would be up for grabs. And I think I completely agree with Anders. There's no other solution. If people want to murder you, you murder them first, or you remove them. You either put them in jail or you murder them first. That's very simple, and it's not even murder. So that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sort of actions by it's always weird to talk about the Europe. So let's just say some of the Western European states or the European Union. But it's sort of important to remember that even when it came to sort of support of Ukraine, I mean, the fact is, if America was not sort of ready to jump in to help Ukraine, they would probably fall with like European Union was really slow, and European states were really slow. Besides, I mean, few exceptions like Poland needs to be said, and generally the eastern states were much more willing to support Ukraine, and my own country.
No,
Slovakia
listen, just to be clear, Daniel, Joe Biden told us all in America this bullshit lie that everyone knew was a ridiculous lie, that the Russians were amassing on the border for a training exercise. And no matter how many thousands of or tens of thousands of Russian troops showed up there, and no matter how many tanks and so on, Joe Biden told us all that this was just an action and nobody was going to invade anybody. That was the story. And when it finally happened, we all said, well, we all knew that, and Joe Biden knew that. And he didn't want to do anything about it because Joe Biden didn't do a thing about anything that went on in the world. And if people think he did, they should write into the chat and tell me one thing that Joe Biden actually did to make the world a safer place during his entire 4 years. And the world got to be very dangerous.
I don't want to be like a defender of Biden, but at least I think on Ukraine, he really led sort of a bipartisan, I'd say, support of Ukraine that, you know, I don't think we could have seen or we haven't seen from anybody else. He was the one sort of in charge. And I think at least the defense of Ukraine and, you know, like the first 2 days of his support of Israel were pretty good overall.
They were all talk, though, Daniel. They were all talk. I mean, yeah, he gave them some money and some arms, but he didn't put any major sanctions on. You know, we found out about these little bits of sanctions on Russia here and there, and he talked. It just like he said, everybody don't attack Israel, and everybody did. And he also hamstrung Israel to respond to Hezbollah for a long time. All my point is that, and we've said that on the show here, if you let bad people, evil people get away with stuff, they continue to do it. And appeasing people or pretending it doesn't exist never ends up well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't find that he did enough. I mean, especially when it comes to sort of the sanctions of Russia. The fact is that America, I believe, is sort of a leader of the free world, and it needs to sort of put its foot down much harder. Especially, I think, when it came to sanctions to Russia. The fact is that I think recently, actually, I think Czechia has completely decoupled from sort of buying sort of fossil fuels or sort of being connected in any way through fossil fuels within Russia. But the fact that we were sort of trading with Russia, not only after 2022, which we are still doing. We're still like European Union or nations in European Union are still trading with Russia, like in 2025. But the fact that kept happening even after 2014 was this clear lack of leadership, this clear lack of actually realizing what's going on. And the big part to it is because, of course, European Union refuses to actually use any energy sources that work, so we actually have to buy them from Russia. But yeah, to go to you, Anders, I mean, I guess we can start wrapping up. What can, yeah, I mean, when I talked about the philosophy, the fact is that once you sort of read philosophy, once you understand, let's say, objectivism and what Ayn Rand talked about, specifically the sort of the importance of principles, you realize, you know, principles are not something that are sort of like a nice thing to have. Similar to sort of like having good habits. It's something you do not because you see immediate results, but because you understand the long-term ramifications of abandoning philosophy, abandoning principles, sort of going by whatever, sort of not having any habits and just doing whatever you want. You realize that that will screw you over so much in the long term. I mean, talking about European Union energy policy, talking about, you know, not standing up to dictators, talking about like helping dictators around the world, like the Soviet Union during World War II. We are paying the price of not realizing the importance of principles.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. I mean, we have seen over 100 years of pragmatism ruling the West, and as a result, our confidence in what is right and wrong has continuously been eroded. We've talked about, how we had the moral confidence to hit Japan and Germany hard. There was a pretty clear black and white view of the world back then. It wasn't by no means perfect, but it has kind of blended into gray tones ever since. With every conflict we've had, it has gone slowly downhill. It has declined to the point of where we are now, and we're in this total pragmatist mess where principles, whether you disregard them or not, you're ruled by them. The world is run by principles. It's a necessary consequence of the facts of reality and the human mind and human nature. So it's to your own peril that you disregard them. And if we're looking at the current and most recent administration, it seems like the only principle, or the ruling principle, is that there are no principles. And you could say that of pragmatism in general, going back over 100 years. And so until we get a philosophical turnaround, we'll probably continue to muddle along. And when that will happen, is my guess is as good as yours. But
Yeah,
I keep advocating for it. And, at the same time, we're living in the best world ever materially. And keep fighting for better principles, and at the same time enjoy and live your life to the best of your ability.
Somebody in the chat, I think sarcastically, says principles can be so bothersome. I think some people, especially, people who say like objectivism is a dogma, or people who say that sort of, that it's sort of like a dogmatic, rigid thing, really do not understand it because, similar, like I really, like principles and habits are really like a similar thing that I would compare them. You wouldn't say that sort of like habits are bothersome, or once you understand going to the gym actually yields results. That is the same thing as realizing philosophy yields results. That's when you realize that when and it doesn't matter what area you want to apply it, building a business, sort of living your life, having relationships, or act on the world stage, defending a nation like Israel as it defends, you realize the dividends it pays. You realize why it's needed. And on the opposite, you'll realize what not adhering to principles, like appeasing dictators, North Korea, appeasing North Korea will lead them to have nuclear weapons. Appeasing Russia will lead them to invade like foreign nations. We have two more nations that, like Iran and like China, that both one wants to invade and one wants to develop nuclear weapons. You'll see that not abiding by principles and where that will lead. To go to you, Michael, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Well, for those who think that objectivism is a dogma, think about the name. And Jeff Bezos said it, and I don't think Jeff Bezos is particularly specifically an Ayn Rand fan. I think I've heard him say, give quotes from him, but he said, reality thus far, or something to the effect that reality is undefeated. And you can choose to believe whatever you want, but the goal of objectivism is to be objective about reality and not sugarcoat it and not try to come up with some philosophy that actually is in la-la land and doesn't exist here. I mean, in my la-la land, I think cancer should be cured. I don't like cancer. I don't think people should die from it and suffer from it. So I'm in my la-la land, but that's not objectively what happens. And I know that sounds like a ridiculous analogy, maybe, but if you think about the way people treat terrorists today, particularly Hamas and Iran, they basically live in that same la-la land where Hamas and Iran are the cancers. It's a remarkable consideration. There are other philosophies around. I would suggest very strongly that a lot of what ended up in the American Constitution, the Declaration of Independence itself, and then what constituted the government 13 or 14 years later, is very much consistent with and derived from, or certainly objectivism didn't exist back then because Ayn Rand hadn't come up with it yet. But a lot of her principles are completely consistent with those documents. And the documents that support Western Europe and Western thought, all the way from John Locke, up to John Stuart Mills and so on, are absolutely consistent with this: life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, these are really important principles. They don't exist in most of the Arab world. I would say all of the Arab world. I'm not aware of any Arab country where they exist, at least those four things. And it certainly doesn't exist in any terrorist country. Those are something that we should all take home with us and think about, especially as we watch a lot of the people on the progressive side and the people that are jumping around supporting people like Hamas and so on.
Where can people find you?
LinkedIn, Kaufman with 2 Fs.
And Anders, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, we're criticizing Israel here to justifiably to some extent because of its internal conflicts, and it's a welfare state, and has a lot of philosophical contradictions, and are ruled by the same pragmatism to a large extent that the rest of the Western world is ruled by. But all that aside, Israel is still a vastly superior nation compared to its neighbor, because it's a representative of those principles that Michael just mentioned, as poorly implemented as they may be. But in that sense, it's a representative for Western civilization, and that's why we need to defend Israel's rights to exist and Israel's right to occupy their territories. You can find me on Substack, andersingemarsson.substack.com, and my book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, is available on Amazon.
Thank you. And with that, thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective. And also we have super chats from Bonnie and Jonathan. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if I mentioned it. Thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thanks.